Religion is the oldest and most universal concern of mankind. It has accompanied man from the earliest dawn of his self-consciousness. It has lived with him in his joys and his sorrows. It has watched over his cradle and over his grave. But if religion is as ancient as man himself, it is not therefore immutable. Every age has had its religion, but not the same religion. Religion changes with the consciousness of man, for religion is nothing else than the self-consciousness of man in relation to his own essence. When man is rude, his gods are rude. When man is refined, his gods are refined. When man reaches the height of knowledge, his gods either vanish before the light or are transformed into the reflection of that knowledge. Thus, to know the religion of an age is to know the age itself, for religion is the mirror in which man beholds the image of his own nature. The time has come when religion must again be considered not as something divine above humanity, but as something human that arises from humanity. Theology has too long clothed itself with the majesty of eternity, demanding unconditional reverence, as though it were itself the voice of God. But what theology calls God is in truth only the image of man's own powers, torn from him and placed above him as a being distinct and superior. What man adores as divine is in fact his own essence estranged from him. This estrangement is the root of all the contradictions and confusions that darken human life. Religion, in its past forms, has been both the consolation and the chain of man. It has comforted him in suffering but enslaved his reason. It has exalted his imagination but bound his will. It has promised heaven but despised the earth. The task of the present is to unveil this mystery, to show religion in its truth, which is humanity itself. When we look back on the religions of the past, we see how man's first need was to project his own weakness into external beings. The forces of nature surrounded him with terror, storms, thunder, and the changing seasons appeared as the manifestations of hidden powers. To appease these powers, he offered sacrifices. He bowed in fear before the unknown. In this primitive stage, religion was but the poetry of ignorance, the mythology of helplessness. Yet even here, the secret was the same: man unconsciously worshipped his own nature. For what is the god of the storm but the personification of fear and wonder? What is the god of fertility but the exaltation of desire and hope? Man gave body and name to his feelings, and then he knelt before them as though they were independent beings. Later came the religions of morality, which sought to bind man not only by fear but by duty. Here the divine was no longer merely the power of nature, but the power of law. God became the legislator, the guardian of justice, the punisher of crime. But even here, what man called God was nothing but his own conscience exalted above him. Man transferred the voice of duty from his heart into the heavens, and then trembled before the echo of his own moral nature. Thus religion still remained the projection of man's essence, though now in a nobler form. Yet even in this nobler form, it concealed its secret. It alienated man from himself, for it placed the ground of morality outside of him, in a foreign will. Christianity, the religion which has dominated Europe for centuries, carried this alienation to its highest point. In Christianity, man no longer found God in the powers of nature or in the voice of duty, but in a historical person, in the God-man. Here the divine was not only distinct from man, it was opposed to him as the infinite to the finite, the holy to the sinful, the creator to the creature. Man was declared incapable of good by his own strength, condemned by nature, saved only by grace. In this religion, the estrangement of man from himself reached its climax. The virtues of man were denied, his essence was degraded, and in the place of his natural dignity was set the majesty of a being who stood above him, demanding adoration, submission, self-annihilation. Christianity, while it revealed the depth of man's longing for reconciliation, also deepened his slavery, for it taught him that he could find himself only by losing himself in another. But history is not a circle. It is a progress. Man does not remain forever a child. He learns, he grows, he dares to know. The same power of reason that once created the gods now destroys them, or rather, reabsorbs them into himself. For reason shows that all the attributes of God are but attributes of man. When we say God is love, we mean that love is divine, that it is the highest essence of man. When we say God is wisdom, we mean that wisdom is sacred, that it is the truth of man. God is only the mirror in which man contemplates his own nature, purified and exalted. The time has come to recognize this truth openly, to cease worshipping the shadow and to embrace the substance. The religion of the past has been the alienation of man from himself. The religion of the future must be the reconciliation of man with himself. This reconciliation is not the destruction of religion, but its fulfillment. Religion, rightly understood, is the self-consciousness of man in relation to his essence. The error of the past was to place this essence outside of man, to transform it into an alien being. The truth of the future is to recognize that this essence is man himself, that the divine dwells not in heaven but in the heart, in love, in reason, in community. The task of the new religion is therefore to restore to man what the old religions have taken from him: his dignity, his freedom, his power. Man must learn to find in himself the source of consolation, the ground of morality, the object of reverence. What was once divided must be united. The essence of religion is not beyond man but within him. It may be objected that such a view abolishes God, that it leaves man alone in a cold and empty universe. But this objection arises only from the prejudice that man is nothing without God. On the contrary, man is nothing with a God who is not himself. The more he exalts God, the more he debases himself. The more he gives to heaven, the more he takes from earth. True religion does not consist in sacrificing man to God, but in recognizing that man is the highest being for man. The infinite worth of love, of reason, of freedom is not diminished because we no longer ascribe them to a supernatural person. On the contrary, they gain in reality, for they are seen as the powers of our own nature. When man bows before these powers as existing in himself and in his fellows, he bows not in fear but in joy, not in slavery but in freedom. Religion of the past has separated man from nature as well as from himself. It has despised the earth as a place of exile. It has pointed to heaven as the true home. But man is of the earth, and the earth is his dwelling. To despise the earth is to despise man. The religion of the future will reconcile man with nature. It will teach him to find beauty in the world, to revere life in all its forms, to live not in expectation of another world, but in fulfillment of this one. For what is heaven but the image of human happiness? And what is the true way to reach heaven but to make earth a place of love and justice? The future religion will sanctify not death but life, not renunciation but joy, not submission but freedom. Theology has claimed to possess the truth, but in fact it has concealed it under veils and dogmas. The truth is simple: man is the measure of religion. All the mysteries of faith dissolve when we recognize this. The Trinity is but the union of love, reason, and will in man. The Incarnation is but the recognition that man himself is the highest being. The sacrifice of Christ is but the expression of man's longing to give himself for others. Stripped of their supernatural disguise, these doctrines reveal the human essence. What was once believed in as divine history is in truth human nature. The task of philosophy is to translate theology into anthropology, to bring back the predicates from heaven to earth, from God to man. This translation does not destroy the sacred but restores it. For the sacred is nothing else than the recognition of value, of dignity, of what is worthy of reverence. Love is sacred, truth is sacred, justice is sacred. Let us then venerate these not as attributes of a distant being, but as realities in ourselves. Let us not divide our life into profane and holy, For life itself is holy when lived in the spirit of love and reason. The religion of the future will not have temples of stone, but the temple of humanity. Its priests will be not a caste, but every man and woman who lives for truth and love. Its service will be not ritual, but action, not words, but deeds. Its heaven will be the community of free and loving beings. Its God will be humanity itself. Thus the task of religion is transformed. It is no longer to bind man to a God above him, but to unite man with man. It is no longer to prepare him for another world, but to teach him to live in this one. It is no longer to abase him before a supernatural majesty, but to raise him to the consciousness of his own dignity. The religion of the future is the religion of humanity, of love, of reason, of community. It is not a denial of religion, but its truth. For what is religion in its essence but the expression of man's relation to his highest being? In the past this highest being was conceived as God. In the future it will be recognized as man. To accomplish this transformation is the duty of our time. The old forms of faith are crumbling, their dogmas are no longer believed, their ceremonies no longer inspire. Yet the need for religion, the hunger for meaning, the thirst for unity remains. It is not enough to destroy, we must also build. We must give to man a religion that satisfies his heart and his reason, that unites him with his fellows, that reconciles him with nature, that makes life itself sacred. Such a religion is possible, for it is nothing else than the truth of man himself. The religion of the future will not come down from heaven, it will rise from the earth. It will not be revealed in a book, but in life. It will not be imposed by authority, but embraced by freedom. It will not separate, but unite. It will not enslave, but liberate. It will be the final reconciliation of man with himself, with nature, and with his fellows. God is the most ancient and the most persistent of man's ideas, and yet he is nothing other than man's own essence projected outward, reflected as a being distinct, exalted, and infinite. The nature of God is the nature of man placed outside of man, magnified beyond measure, freed from limitation, adorned with perfection. All divine predicates, when analyzed, are nothing but human qualities set free from imperfection. The human mind creates God by separating from itself its own best attributes, by abstracting them from the limitations of the individual and contemplating them as pure, universal, and eternal. Thus God is love without weakness, wisdom without error, will without hesitation, life without death. But strip away these negations, and what remains is only love, wisdom, will, life, attributes which man knows only through his own experience. To understand God is therefore to understand man. The divine is nothing else than the human essence conceived as absolute. Let us consider what is meant when one says that God is love. Does this mean anything other than that love is held to be the highest quality, the most sacred and divine power? When man loves, he feels himself raised above selfishness, he finds joy in another, he experiences a union that transcends isolation. In love he discovers the meaning of life, for to love is to give and to receive the essence of humanity. And because love so completely satisfies man, he declares that God himself is love. But in this declaration man is only expressing the infinite worth he attaches to his own experience of love. He raises this human feeling to infinity, and thus he worships it as God. So it is with all the other divine attributes. When man calls God wise, he does not mean that he has discovered wisdom in some supernatural being. He means only that wisdom is the highest form of human knowledge, and that it is so exalted that he can only express its dignity by attributing it to God. When man calls God just, he means that justice is sacred, that it ought to be eternal and universal, and to make it so he embodies it in a divine person. In this way all theology is in truth anthropology. The predicates belong to man, the subject alone is an illusion. Man first experiences qualities in himself. Then he places them outside of himself, and finally he worships them as if they were foreign and superior beings. Thus he alienates himself from his own essence. He impoverishes himself in order to enrich God. What is infinite in God is finite in man. What is perfect in God is imperfect in man. Yet these are the same qualities. The difference is only one of degree, not of kind. The divine is the human freed from limitation, purified of contradiction, exalted to the absolute. But precisely this exaltation makes man appear poor by contrast. By tearing from himself his highest powers and transferring them to God, man makes himself weak, dependent, and nothing. The more he attributes to God, the less he leaves to himself. Thus religion, as it has existed, has been the history of man's self-estrangement. It is said that God is almighty. But what does almighty mean? It means only the idea of power freed from limitation. Man knows power in himself, the power of thought, of will, of action. But his power is finite. He cannot realize all that he wills. He cannot overcome all obstacles. He cannot escape death. In imagination he abstracts from these limits. He conceives power as complete, unbounded, irresistible, and he calls this almighty. Yet what is this almighty power if not the power of man extended beyond its natural boundaries? Without the idea of human power, the idea of divine power would be meaningless. To speak of God as omnipotent is only to say that power in the abstract, power without weakness, is divine. Again, God is said to be eternal. But what is eternity? It is life without beginning or end. Man lives, but his life is bounded by birth and death. He longs to continue, he dreads to vanish. So he imagines life freed from these boundaries, life that always was and always will be, and he calls this eternal. But eternity is nothing other than the human desire for unending life, raised to the dignity of the divine. The same holds for omniscience. What is it to know all things? It is simply the perfection of that faculty of knowledge which man already possesses in part. Man is ignorant of many things, his science is limited, his understanding often fails. Yet he has within him the capacity for knowledge, and he longs for its completion. So he imagines a being in whom this longing is realized, in whom ignorance has no place, in whom every truth is known. This being he calls God. But if man had no capacity for knowledge, he could never conceive omniscience. If he had no experience of love, he could never call God love. If he had no sense of justice, he could never worship God as just. The content of divinity is derived wholly from humanity. Only the form of absoluteness is added by imagination. This is the great truth that religion has concealed under its symbols. The gods are nothing but man's own essence, projected outward and worshipped as independent beings. In worshipping God, man worships his own nature, though he does not recognize it as such. He kneels before the image of his own powers estranged from him. He prays to his own heart, but does not know that it is his own. Thus religion has been at once the revelation and the concealment of man's essence. It has revealed it, for all divine attributes are human. It has concealed it, for these attributes are transferred to a foreign subject. Religion is true in substance, false in form. Its substance is the affirmation of human qualities as divine, its form is the negation of man as their subject. The task of philosophy is to reveal the truth by restoring the predicates to their true subject, by showing that what religion calls God is in fact man himself. When we grasp this truth, the contradictions of theology dissolve. How can God be at once just and merciful, almighty and yet permit evil, eternal and yet act in time? These contradictions arise because we have torn from man his attributes and placed them in a foreign being. But once we recognize that justice and mercy, power and wisdom are qualities of man himself, the contradiction disappears. Justice and mercy are not abstract, they are human feelings that coexist in the human heart. Power and limitation, eternity and temporality, are not irreconcilable when understood as the conditions of human life. The mystery is solved when we cease to treat the divine as an alien being and understand it as the expression of humanity. The consequence of this insight is immense. If the nature of God is the nature of man, then to know man is to know God. The study of humanity is the true theology. The understanding of religion is the understanding of man's essence. Anthropology is the key to theology. Instead of looking to heaven for revelations, we must look into ourselves and our fellows. What man calls God is nothing other than what man values as his own highest being. To study human love is to study divine love, for there is no other. To study human reason is to study divine wisdom, for there is no other. To study human morality is to study divine justice, for there is no other. The divine is not something beyond man but within him. All roads of theology lead back to anthropology. But let us not misunderstand. To say that God is man does not mean that the individual as he is in his weakness and folly is divine. It means that the essence of man, the ideal of man, is divine. The divine is the human nature conceived in its perfection, freed from contradiction, contemplated as absolute. In religion, man unconsciously affirms the infinite worth of his own essence. The error is only that he separates it from himself, that he denies it as his own and attributes it to another. Thus religion testifies to the greatness of man even while it humiliates him. It shows that man has within him the power of love, the capacity for wisdom, the sense of justice, the longing for eternity. These are not illusions, they are real powers. But they are his own, not another's. They are to be realized in life, not worshipped in imagination. The task of the future is to recognize this openly, to unite what has been divided, to restore man to himself. Consider the history of religious development. In polytheism, the various attributes of man were divided among many gods. One god was the personification of war, another of love, another of wisdom. Each was a fragment of man's nature deified. Monotheism arose when man united these fragments into a single being, when he conceived the totality of his essence as one God. But the essence remained alien, the subject remained false. The unity was true, the subject was false. The next step is to restore this unity to its true subject, to recognize that the totality of divine attributes is nothing other than the totality of human essence. Monotheism was a progress beyond polytheism, but it still left man estranged. The final progress is to go beyond monotheism itself to the religion of humanity, in which man openly acknowledges himself as the bearer of all divinity. It will be said that this doctrine abolishes God. Yes, it abolishes the false God who is other than man, who stands above him, who enslaves him. But it does not abolish the divine, it restores it. It shows that the divine is not a foreign being, but the reality of man's own essence. It sanctifies what is truly sacred: love, reason, justice, freedom, community. It destroys the illusion only to give the truth. It abolishes the idol only to reveal the living reality. It takes away nothing but the alienation that has impoverished man, and it gives him back his own wealth. To understand that God is man is not to lose religion but to find it. It is to exchange the shadow for the substance, the dream for the reality, the estrangement for reconciliation. The religion of the future, then, will no longer be a worship of God as a person distinct from man. It will be the consciousness of man's essence as divine. It will not consist in prayers to heaven, but in the cultivation of love on earth. It will not consist in dogmas about supernatural mysteries, but in the recognition of truth in human reason. It will not consist in ceremonies and sacrifices, but in the practice of justice and freedom. To honor God will be to honor man. To serve God will be to serve man. To love God will be to love man. For man is the highest being for man, and the essence of God is nothing other than the essence of humanity. This insight is not the invention of philosophy alone. It is implicit in religion itself. Every time man calls God love, he is unconsciously affirming the divinity of his own heart. Every time he calls God just, he is proclaiming the sanctity of his own conscience. Every time he prays for wisdom, he is testifying to the worth of his own reason. Philosophy only makes explicit what religion conceals. It unmasks the secret, it shows man to himself. And in doing so, it does not destroy the sacred but grounds it more firmly, for it shows that the sacred is not an illusion but a reality, not a foreign being but the truth of man's own nature. Thus the exploration of God leads back always to the exploration of humanity. To know the divine is to know the human. The divine attributes are rooted in human desires and limitations. They are born from man's need, from his longing, from his ideals. God is the mirror of man. In God man sees his own image, but he sees it inverted, estranged, alien. The task of the future is to recognize the image as his own, to reconcile man with himself, to unite the divine and the human. Then religion will no longer be the alienation of man, but his affirmation. It will no longer be the projection of his essence, but its realization. It will no longer conceal but reveal. It will be the consciousness of humanity as divine, the knowledge that to understand man is to understand God. Faith and reason have long stood in opposition, each claiming dominion over the heart and mind of man. Faith demands submission, it asks man to renounce his doubts, to silence his questions, to close his eyes to contradiction. Reason demands freedom, it insists on inquiry, it will not bow before authority. It will not be silenced by fear. Faith says believe because it is written, because it has been revealed, because it has been handed down from fathers to children. Reason says believe only what you can see, what you can demonstrate, what you can understand. Faith makes ignorance a virtue, reason makes knowledge a duty. These two principles cannot be reconciled so long as they are regarded as absolute opposites. Where faith reigns in its purity, reason is persecuted as pride and sin. Where reason triumphs, faith is exposed as illusion and superstition. The history of religion is therefore also the history of this conflict. Faith has its origin in the need of the heart, in the longing of man for certainty, consolation, and support. Faced with suffering and death, with injustice and uncertainty, man grasps at something higher than himself, at a power that guarantees meaning and order. He believes because he wishes to be consoled, not because he knows. Faith is an act of will, not of knowledge. It is the affirmation of what man desires to be true, not the recognition of what is true. This is why faith is always opposed to reason, for reason demands evidence, demonstration, necessity. Reason does not ask what man wishes but what is. Faith begins where knowledge ends, but it also ends where knowledge begins. For every step forward in knowledge diminishes the domain of faith. Where ignorance rules, faith has unlimited power. Where science enters, faith retreats. The God who once governed the thunder and the stars disappears before astronomy. The God who once healed disease vanishes before medicine. The more man knows, the less he believes. This opposition explains the hostility of religion toward philosophy. Philosophy is nothing other than reason, applied to the highest questions. It will not accept dogmas without proof. It will not bow before authority. It demands to understand. Religion calls this arrogance, but in truth it is humility, for reason submits only to what is. To demand that man should believe without understanding is to demand that he renounce his humanity. For man is man through reason. He differs from the beast not by faith, but by thought. To silence reason is to mutilate man, to reduce him to slavery. Faith commands him to obey another's word, reason commands him to obey only the truth. Faith enslaves, reason liberates. Faith separates man from himself, reason reconciles him with himself. Faith places truth in a foreign authority, reason places it in the human mind. Thus philosophy is the true religion of the future, because it makes truth the highest object, not authority, not tradition, not imagination. The essence of philosophy is freedom. It dares to think what faith forbids. It asks questions that faith declares impious. It subjects all things to criticism, even religion itself. But precisely this freedom is the highest piety. For what is piety if not reverence for truth? And what is truth if not that which is universal, necessary, and self-evident? Faith reveres a word, a book, a tradition. Philosophy reveres truth itself, independent of all authority. Faith clings to symbols and miracles. Philosophy seeks the rational essence concealed in them. Thus philosophy does not destroy religion, but fulfills it. It strips off the husk and preserves the kernel. It takes away the illusion to reveal the reality. Religion without philosophy is superstition. Philosophy without religion is abstraction. The religion of the future will be the unity of both, the devotion of religion and the truth of philosophy. It will not ask man to believe what contradicts reason. It will not make ignorance the condition of salvation. It will demand knowledge, for knowledge is the only true salvation. The role of knowledge is therefore decisive. Knowledge replaces blind belief by opening the eyes of man to reality. Where faith says trust in the unseen, knowledge says understand the seen. Where faith says submit to mystery, knowledge says penetrate the mystery until it vanishes. Faith thrives on darkness, knowledge lives in light. Faith proclaims blessed are they who have not seen and yet believe. Knowledge proclaims blessed are they who see and understand. Faith glorifies resignation, knowledge inspires action. Faith makes man passive, knowledge makes him free. For what is freedom but the consciousness of necessity? The man who knows why things are as they are is free. The man who believes only what he is told is a slave. Knowledge gives man mastery over nature. Faith leaves him in helplessness. Knowledge gives man dignity, for it teaches him that he is not a mere plaything of powers above him, but the possessor of reason by which he comprehends the world. Knowledge transforms religion by bringing it back to earth, by showing that its essence lies in humanity itself. The great mistake of faith is to place truth outside of man, in revelation, in authority, in a supernatural realm. This is to alienate truth, to deny man's own power of knowledge. Faith says man cannot know God unless God reveals himself. But what is this revelation except the expression of man's own nature in imaginative form? Faith does not see this because it despises reason. Yet the moment reason is applied, the illusion is dispelled. The so-called mysteries of faith dissolve when translated into human language. The incarnation is only the affirmation that man is the highest being. The Trinity is only the unity of reason, love, and will. The resurrection is only the hope of life beyond death. All these doctrines are human ideas expressed as divine facts. Philosophy uncovers their meaning, it reveals their human content, it restores them to their truth. Thus philosophy is not the enemy, but the interpreter of religion. It rescues religion from contradiction by showing its essence. It reconciles religion with reason by revealing that they have the same object, the truth of man. But so long as faith insists on its supernatural form, there can be no reconciliation. Faith demands unconditional submission. Philosophy demands unconditional freedom. Faith clings to authority, philosophy to evidence. Faith says believe though it is absurd. Philosophy says believe only what is rational. These are opposites. Yet history shows that faith cannot endure against reason. Every religion that forbids inquiry, that suppresses knowledge, that condemns science, prepares its own ruin. For man cannot renounce reason without renouncing his humanity. The progress of humanity is the progress of reason. Superstition perishes, truth remains. The religion of the future will therefore not rest on faith in the supernatural, but on knowledge of the natural. It will not oppose reason but embrace it. It will not forbid inquiry but demand it. It will not suppress doubt but resolve it. Its creed will be truth. Its worship will be knowledge. Its God will be humanity conscious of its own essence. Some will object that knowledge is cold, that it cannot console as faith consoles. But this is a prejudice. Is it truly consoling to believe in what is false? Is it not a deeper consolation to know what is true? Faith consoles by illusion. Knowledge consoles by reality. Faith says death is not death, suffering is not suffering, evil is not evil. Knowledge says death is natural, suffering can be alleviated, evil can be overcome. Which is the higher consolation? Faith says endure because heaven will reward you. Knowledge says act, transform the world, create justice and happiness here and now. Which is more worthy of man? The religion of the future will not console by illusions, but by empowering man to make reality itself better. It will not promise another world, but sanctify this one. It will not preach resignation, but action. It will not glorify ignorance, but knowledge. Its faith will be faith in humanity, its hope will be hope in reason, its love will be love of truth. Thus the tension between faith and reason is not an accident, but a necessity. Faith belongs to the past, reason to the future. Faith is the childhood of humanity, reason its maturity. In childhood man believes whatever he is told, he accepts authority without question. In maturity he demands proof, he thinks for himself, he refuses to be deceived. Humanity cannot remain forever a child. It must grow up, it must dare to know. The motto of the future is not believe but understand. The true religion is not faith but philosophy, for philosophy unites devotion to truth with the freedom of reason. It teaches man to venerate what is truly worthy of veneration: love, justice, wisdom, humanity. It demands not blind submission, but conscious recognition. It abolishes the false opposition between the divine and the human by showing that the divine is the human essence itself. It replaces blind belief with clear knowledge, superstition with truth, slavery with freedom. In this lies the redemption of man, the salvation not of his soul from another world, but of his life in this one. Morality has too long been regarded as the command of a being outside of man, as the decree of a divine will which stands above humanity and imposes its law upon him. But in truth the moral law is not foreign to man, it does not descend upon him from heaven, it springs from his very nature. To be moral is not to obey another, but to obey oneself, to live according to the essence of humanity. The belief that morality depends on the will of God is the most dangerous of illusions, for it makes duty dependent on authority. It robs man of his freedom. It degrades him to a slave. True morality begins only when man recognizes that he himself is the source of duty. That conscience is not the echo of a divine voice, but the voice of his own essence. To act morally is to act as a man, to realize the dignity of humanity within oneself. When man believes that good is good only because God commands it, he destroys the very essence of morality. For then good has no value in itself, it is valuable only as obedience. The highest virtue becomes submission, the highest vice disobedience. But morality that depends on command is no morality, it is only servility. The slave who obeys through fear is not moral, but compelled. True morality requires freedom. It requires that man act not from fear, but from conviction, not because he is ordered, but because he recognizes the rightness of the act. The divine command theory undermines this, for it reduces morality to the will of another. But if there is no morality apart from God's will, then God himself is beyond morality, for he has no one above him. If what is good only because God wills it, then it is arbitrary. If he commanded cruelty, cruelty would be good. This shows the absurdity of making morality depend on divine command. The truth is that good is good in itself, that justice, love, and truth are sacred because they are the essence of humanity. God is not the ground of morality, morality is the ground of God. When man calls God good, he means only that goodness is divine, that it is absolute and worthy of reverence. Thus the moral law is not dependent on God, but God is dependent on the moral law, which is nothing other than the nature of man. Freedom is the condition of morality. Without freedom, there is no responsibility. Without responsibility, no morality. If man were a mere machine moved by divine will, his actions would have no moral worth. But man knows himself to be free. He feels in himself the power to choose, to decide, to act according to conscience. This freedom is not unlimited, for he is conditioned by nature and society. But within these conditions he knows himself as a responsible agent. He cannot escape responsibility, for even in refusing to choose he chooses. This consciousness of freedom is the root of dignity. Man is not a thing to be used, but a person to be respected, because he is capable of self-determination. To be moral is to respect this dignity in oneself and in others, to treat man not as a means, but as an end, to recognize in every individual the infinite worth of humanity. This recognition does not come from fear of God, but from the conscience of man. Conscience is the inner witness of freedom, the sense of duty, the awareness of obligation that binds man even when no one compels him. It is not an external voice, but the voice of man's essence. The religions of the past have degraded morality by making it dependent on fear. They have taught that man must do good to avoid hell and to gain heaven. But action from fear is not moral, it is selfish and servile. The man who avoids crime only because he dreads punishment is not virtuous, he is a coward. The man who does good only for the sake of reward is not righteous, he is calculating. True morality requires purity of motive, the recognition of good for its own sake. To replace fear of God with conscience is therefore the task of the future. The moral law must be recognized as binding not because God commands it, but because it is the essence of humanity. Love is good because it is the realization of human essence, not because it is rewarded. Justice is good because it is necessary to human dignity, not because it is decreed. Truth is good because it is the life of reason, not because it is sanctioned by authority. Morality is human, not divine. It arises from man and it belongs to man. This recognition transforms ethics. When morality is seen as divine command, it is rigid, external, imposed. Man obeys because he must, not because he wills. But when morality is recognized as human necessity, it becomes internal, free, and living. Man acts not because he fears but because he loves. He fulfills duty not as a burden but as the realization of his own being. Ethical development then becomes the cultivation of humanity, the education of conscience, the deepening of freedom. Man grows morally as he grows humanly, by awakening to his own dignity, by recognizing the dignity of others, by enlarging the sphere of sympathy and love. The history of morality is the history of humanity's self-discovery. At first man thought himself moral only when he obeyed God. Then he discovered that morality is obedience to himself, to his own essence. The more he understands this, the freer and nobler he becomes. Consider how morality has been bound to religion in history. The commandments of God were proclaimed as the foundation of law, but their content reveals their human origin. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness. These are not divine mysteries, they are human necessities. Society cannot exist without them. They express the conditions of human life. Their sanctity does not depend on the authority of heaven, but on the nature of man. If God had not commanded them, they would still be binding, for they arise from the needs of humanity. To believe otherwise is to debase morality, to make it dependent on arbitrary will. But morality does not require sanction. It requires recognition. It is valid because it is true, because it expresses the essence of man. To love one's neighbor is good not because God says so, but because humanity is realized only in community, in love. Thus morality is autonomous, it stands on its own ground, which is the dignity of man. It follows that the progress of morality is inseparable from the progress of freedom. As long as morality is conceived as divine command, man remains a child, bound by authority. True maturity begins when he recognizes himself as the source of duty. Then he no longer needs threats or rewards, he acts from conviction. He no longer serves a master, he is his own master. This autonomy is the highest dignity. It is the difference between slave and free man, between superstition and truth, between past and future. The religion of the future will therefore sanctify not obedience to God, but fidelity to conscience. It will venerate not submission, but freedom, not fear, but love. Its highest commandment will be respect humanity in yourself and in others. For to respect humanity is to fulfill the moral law. This does not mean that conscience is infallible. It develops with knowledge, with culture, with experience. Primitive conscience was narrow, it recognized only the tribe, not mankind. It permitted cruelty to strangers, to slaves, to women. But as man discovered his own essence more fully, conscience widened. It recognized the dignity of every man, the rights of all. Ethical development is therefore the expansion of conscience, the universalization of humanity. The more man knows himself, the more he recognizes himself in others. The stranger, the enemy, the outcast are gradually seen as men like oneself, and therefore as ends, not means. This progress is the true history of morality, and it is guided not by fear of God, but by the growth of human consciousness. Fear does not enlarge the heart, love does. Authority does not enlighten conscience, knowledge does. Thus the future of morality lies not in theology but in anthropology, not in religion but in humanity. If morality is human, it follows that responsibility is human. To make God the judge is to escape responsibility. Man excuses himself by saying that God alone knows the heart, that God alone will judge. But true responsibility is responsibility before men, before one's own conscience. To sin against man is to sin against God only because God is nothing but the human essence. The true judgment is not in heaven but on earth. The cry of the oppressed, the shame of the guilty, the respect of the righteous, these are the voices of judgment. No divine tribunal is needed, for conscience is itself the tribunal. It rewards with peace, it punishes with remorse. The greatest torment is not hell, but the gnawing of conscience. The highest reward is not heaven, but the harmony of soul that comes from doing good. Thus morality remains effective even without God, for its ground is in man himself. This recognition also changes the meaning of freedom. Freedom is not license, it is not the ability to do whatever one pleases. It is the power to act according to reason and conscience. The man who follows every impulse is not free, he is a slave to passion. The free man is he who governs himself, who acts from conviction, who chooses the good because he recognizes it as his own essence. This is why freedom and morality are inseparable. Without morality, freedom is chaos. Without freedom, morality is slavery. True human life requires both. The religions of the past opposed them, making morality obedience and freedom sin. But the religion of the future will unite them, for it will teach that to be free is to be moral, and to be moral is to be free. Christianity, which for centuries has reigned as the supreme religion of Europe, is at once the most spiritual and the most alienating form of faith. In it, the essence of humanity is carried to its highest point of estrangement, for it no longer worships merely powers of nature or abstract attributes of justice and wisdom, but a historical figure proclaimed as both God and man, infinite and finite, eternal and temporal, creator and creature. This union of contradictions, far from reconciling man with himself, rends him asunder. It declares him incapable of goodness without grace, devoid of worth without redemption, lost and condemned by his very nature. Christianity exalts man only to abase him. It reveals his essence only to alienate it from him. It proclaims his dignity only to deny it in fact. Its doctrines, when examined, prove to be nothing other than the projection of man's essence, torn from him, magnified, and then opposed to him as something foreign and absolute. The central doctrine is the incarnation. God becomes man in Christ. At first sight, this seems to exalt humanity, for it affirms that man is worthy of union with the divine. But in truth it degrades man, for it declares that only in one individual, in one miraculous person, is humanity united with divinity. The Incarnation is not the revelation of man's essence in every man, but the monopolizing of that essence in a single figure. It teaches that man as man is unworthy, that only by miracle, only by grace, can divinity dwell in human form. But this miracle conceals the simple truth that man himself is the highest being, that humanity is itself divine. Instead of recognizing this openly, Christianity removes it from man and places it in Christ alone. Thus man is estranged from his own essence. He is taught to look to another for what lies in himself. He worships Christ as God, and in doing so he denies his own divinity. The Incarnation is the alienation of humanity from itself, for it affirms of one what is true of all. The doctrine of atonement carries this alienation further. Man is declared sinful by nature, incapable of good, condemned to eternal punishment. Only the sacrifice of Christ, only his suffering and death, can reconcile him to God. Here the worth of man is utterly denied. He is told that he cannot stand on his own, that his conscience, his will, his love are worthless. He must be saved by another, by an act of grace outside his own being. But what is this doctrine except the expression of man's own sense of guilt, his consciousness of contradiction between his ideals and his actions? Instead of recognizing this as a human fact, Christianity makes it a metaphysical doom, a corruption of nature. It then projects the solution into a supernatural event, the death of Christ, instead of into the reconciliation of man with himself. Thus the atonement is but the dramatization of man's own need for forgiveness, transformed into a divine history. But in believing it as history, man loses the truth, for he is taught to look outward for reconciliation instead of inward, to depend on another instead of himself. He alienates his conscience by placing its absolution in foreign hands. The miracles of Christianity reveal the same process. They are the projection of human wishes and hopes into supernatural facts. Man desires victory over nature, deliverance from sickness, triumph over death. He expresses these desires in the form of miraculous deeds. Christ heals the sick, raises the dead, walks on the sea, feeds the multitude. These are but images of what man longs for, the satisfaction of his hunger, the conquest of death. But instead of recognizing them as symbols of human desire, Christianity asserts them as historical wonders, as proofs of divine power. Thus it again alienates man from himself, for it teaches him that what he wishes is possible only by miracle, by the intervention of a supernatural being, not by the development of his own powers. The miracles flatter his imagination, but enslave his reason. They make him dependent on faith in the incredible instead of on knowledge of the possible. They conceal the truth that man must conquer death and suffering not by miracle, but by science, by love, by human effort. In clinging to miracles he clings to his own impotence. In all these doctrines the same structure is evident. What belongs to man is torn from him and placed outside him. His essence is projected into God or Christ, and then opposed to him as a foreign power. This is the essence of alienation. Man adores his own nature estranged from himself. He prays to his own heart, but does not know it. He sacrifices his own dignity in order to exalt another. He impoverishes himself in order to enrich God. The Incarnation, atonement, and miracles are not revelations of divine mysteries, but revelations of human essence in alienated form. They reveal what man is, but they reveal it as not his own, as belonging to another. Thus religion becomes self-estrangement. It is man's essence turned against him, his own powers made into his masters. Consider how Christianity treats human virtue. Love, compassion, sacrifice, these are exalted as divine, but only when embodied in Christ. When man loves, his love is declared insufficient, tainted with sin. Only the love of Christ is perfect. When man sacrifices, his sacrifice is nothing compared with the cross. Only the death of Christ has saving power. Thus man is deprived of his own virtue, it is acknowledged only to be denied. He is told to imitate Christ, but always with the consciousness that he cannot equal him, that he remains infinitely inferior. His essence is revealed only to be negated. The highest qualities of man are declared divine, but they are denied to man and attributed exclusively to Christ. This is the supreme alienation, man adoring his own nature in the form of another while despising himself. The doctrine of original sin intensifies this estrangement. Man is told that from his birth he is corrupt, that he is incapable of good without grace, that his very nature is depraved. But what is sin if not the consciousness of limitation, of contradiction between ideal and reality? Instead of recognizing this as the condition of finite beings, Christianity transforms it into a metaphysical curse, a guilt inherited from the first man. Thus man is burdened with an alien guilt, condemned not for his own acts, but for the act of another. He is estranged not only from his essence, but from his very existence. He is taught to despise himself from the beginning, to see himself as worthless unless redeemed. This doctrine annihilates human dignity, for it denies the goodness of nature, the worth of conscience, the reality of freedom. It places man in bondage to grace, it makes him a slave to salvation. Even the promise of heaven is part of this alienation, for heaven is but the projection of human happiness into another world. Man longs for peace, for justice, for fulfillment, but instead of striving to realize them on earth, he is taught to wait for them in heaven. Thus he is estranged from his own life, his hopes are diverted from the present to the future, from reality to imagination. He despises the earth as a vale of tears, he neglects his duties here for the sake of a reward there. In seeking heaven, he loses the world. Christianity consoles him only by alienating him from himself, by robbing him of his true task, which is to make earth itself the dwelling of love and justice. Heaven is but the image of human desire, but Christianity makes it a reality beyond, and thereby it estranges man from reality itself. So too with hell. It is the projection of human fear, the terror of guilt and punishment, into a supernatural realm of eternal torment. Instead of recognizing remorse as the natural consequence of wrongdoing, Christianity transforms it into an endless torture decreed by God. Thus it exaggerates fear, it enslaves conscience, it crushes freedom. Man is kept obedient not by love of good, but by dread of damnation. His morality is poisoned by fear, his dignity destroyed. He acts not from conviction, but from terror. Hell is the image of man's own conscience estranged and magnified into a monstrous fantasy. It alienates him from his own moral nature by making him believe that punishment comes not from within, but from without, not from conscience, but from God. The sacraments of Christianity are likewise instruments of alienation. Baptism, communion, confession. These are supposed to confer grace, to cleanse, to absolve. But what are they except externalizations of inner acts? To be cleansed is to repent, to be reconciled is to forgive, to be nourished is to love. But instead of being left to conscience, Christianity attaches them to rituals, to external signs, to priestly power. Thus man loses his own responsibility. He believes that forgiveness comes from a priest, that reconciliation is a matter of right, that nourishment is in bread and wine. His own essence is taken from him and placed in things. He alienates his conscience by making it dependent on ritual. The sacraments are the estrangement of the inner into the outer, of the moral into the ceremonial. Christianity, therefore, is the most perfect form of self-alienation. It contains profound truths, but only in inverted form. It reveals the essence of humanity, but only by denying it to man. It exalts love, justice, sacrifice, hope, but it projects them into Christ, into God, into heaven. It acknowledges them only as foreign to man, never as his own. It alienates man from his own essence by teaching him that he is nothing, that God is everything. The more he gives to God, the less he leaves for himself. The more he adores Christ, the more he despises humanity. Religion thus becomes the history of man's self-denial. He seeks himself in another, he loses himself in the divine, he alienates his own essence. But this alienation cannot last forever. Man must reclaim his essence. He must recognize that what he worships in Christ is nothing other than his own nature, that the divinity of Christ is the humanity of man. The incarnation is true, but not as a miracle in one man. It is true of every man, for humanity itself is divine. The atonement is true, but not as the sacrifice of another. It is true in reconciliation with oneself, in the forgiveness that arises from love. The miracles are true, but not as historical wonders. They are true as expressions of human desire, of man's power to conquer suffering by science, by love, by community. Heaven is true, but not as another world. It is true as the goal of making this world just and happy. Hell is true, but not as eternal torment. It is true as remorse, as the natural consequence of evil. All these doctrines contain truth, but in alienated form. The task of the future is to reclaim them, to translate them back into humanity, to restore man to himself. Religion as it has been is self-alienation. The religion of the future must be self-reconciliation. Man must cease to project his essence into heaven. He must recognize it on earth. He must cease to adore another. He must respect himself. He must cease to despise humanity. He must exalt it. He must cease to live for another world. He must sanctify this one. The truths of Christianity will not perish, but they will be transformed. Love, sacrifice, hope, forgiveness. These remain, but they will be recognized as human, not divine. Their sacredness will not be diminished. It will be increased, for they will be real, not illusory. Man will no longer alienate them from himself. He will live them as his own. Thus, he will reclaim his essence. He will reconcile himself with himself. He will abolish alienation. And in this reconciliation lies the true religion of the future, the religion of humanity. The religion of the future will not begin with heaven, but with earth, not with God, but with man. For the truth long concealed beneath the veils of faith is that man is the true subject of religion, that what has been adored in the name of God is nothing other than the essence of humanity. To bring this truth to light, to abolish alienation and restore man to himself, is to found a new religion, the religion of humanity. This is not the destruction of religion, but its fulfillment. For religion in its innermost meaning is the consciousness of what is highest, most sacred, most absolute. And what is higher, what is more sacred, what is more absolute than man himself, than the dignity of his reason, the depth of his love, the reality of his freedom. To recognize humanity as divine is to affirm the eternal value of human life, to sanctify love and justice, to consecrate truth and beauty as the principles of existence. The past religions turned man's essence into a foreign being, estranged him from himself, humbled him before an idol of his own making. They declared that all worth lies in God and none in man. The religion of the future reverses this. It proclaims that all divinity lies in man, that humanity itself is the object of reverence, not the abstract individual in his isolation, but man in his fullness, in his community, in his fellowship with others. For man is not complete in solitude. He realizes his essence only in love, in sympathy, in solidarity. Therefore, the new religion does not sanctify a solitary God above the world, but the communion of human beings with one another. Its temple is society, its altar is the heart, its sacrifice is love, its heaven is the harmony of all. In this religion there are no mysteries, no miracles, no dogmas. Its truth is transparent, its command is simple: love one another, for in love humanity finds its divinity. Love is the first and highest principle of the new religion, for in love man transcends himself, he finds his own life in another, he discovers that his essence is not isolation but union. To love is to live twice, to enrich oneself by giving, to be free by belonging. All religions have exalted love, but they have torn it from man and attributed it to God. They have declared that only God's love is perfect, that man's love is nothing without divine sanction. The new religion restores love to its true subject. It proclaims that human love is itself sacred, that in every act of sympathy, in every gesture of compassion, in every bond of friendship, divinity is present. Love is not commanded by a foreign law. It arises from the heart. It is the realization of humanity itself. Therefore, to venerate love is not to obey but to live, not to submit but to flourish. In love man reconciles himself with himself and with others. He abolishes estrangement. He overcomes egoism. Love is the truth of religion, and the religion of the future is the religion of love. Compassion is the second sacred principle. For in compassion man recognizes the suffering of another as his own. He feels the unity of humanity in pain as well as in joy. The old religions promised consolation through supernatural grace, through hope of heaven. The new religion consoles by solidarity, by sharing the burden, by turning suffering into community. To relieve suffering is the highest act of worship. To comfort the afflicted is the purest prayer. To heal the wounds of life is the truest sacrament. Compassion is not weakness but strength, for it binds man to man with indissoluble ties. It sanctifies life by making every being worthy of care. In compassion humanity discovers its greatness, for to feel another's sorrow as one's own is to expand the self beyond its boundaries, to embrace the infinite in the finite. Thus compassion is sacred, not because God commands it, but because it reveals the essence of humanity. Solidarity is the third principle, for man is not an isolated being, he is a social being. His essence is realized only in community, in cooperation, in common life. The old religions separated men by faith, by nation, by caste. They declared some chosen, others rejected, some holy, others profane. They divided humanity into believers and unbelievers, saints and sinners. But the religion of humanity knows no exclusion. It proclaims the unity of mankind, the equality of all, the sanctity of every person. Its church is the whole human race, its creed is fellowship, its law is justice. To work for the good of all, to build institutions of freedom, to establish laws of equity, to create a world where every person can flourish. This is its worship. The solidarity of humanity is its God, the brotherhood of man its salvation. For in solidarity man overcomes division, he finds strength in unity, he creates a heaven on earth. The religion of humanity is therefore practical, ethical, earthly. It does not promise another world, it sanctifies this one. It does not preach resignation, it inspires action. It does not console with illusions, it empowers with reality. Its aim is not to prepare man for death, but to teach him to live. It sanctifies the whole of life, the body as well as the soul, labor as well as thought, art as well as morality. It declares that to work is to pray, to create is to worship, to enjoy beauty is to glorify the divine. Every act that enriches humanity, that advances knowledge, that fosters love, that increases happiness, is religious. The old religions divided life into sacred and profane, holy and common. The new religion abolishes this division. All life is sacred when lived in the spirit of humanity. Its heaven is not beyond the grave but in the community of free and loving beings. Its God is not a phantom of imagination, but the reality of man's essence. Knowledge also belongs to this religion. For knowledge is the light that dispels superstition, the power that liberates man from fear, the guide that directs love and action. The old religions opposed knowledge, for they thrived on ignorance. They demanded faith where reason doubted, they exalted mystery where knowledge inquired. But the religion of humanity demands knowledge, for knowledge is sacred. To know is to honor reality, to revere truth. Science is not the enemy, but the ally of religion, for it reveals the wonders of nature. It deepens our reverence for life. It enlarges the horizon of humanity. The astronomer who contemplates the stars the physician who heals the body, the teacher who enlightens the mind. All are priests of the new religion. Their service is the highest form of worship, for it sanctifies truth and makes man free. Knowledge and love are the twin pillars of the religion of humanity, for without knowledge love is blind, and without love knowledge is barren. United, they form the temple of the future. This religion abolishes fear. The old religions kept man in bondage by fear of God, fear of sin, fear of hell. They taught him to tremble, to bow, to abase himself. But fear is unworthy of man, it degrades, it enslaves. The religion of humanity knows only reverence and love. It teaches man to respect himself, to respect others, to respect the truth. It liberates him from terror, it frees him from superstition, it raises him to dignity. It replaces fear with conscience, submission with freedom, resignation with hope. Its commandment is not thou shalt fear, but thou shalt love. Its law is not imposed from without but arises from within. It gives man confidence in himself, for it tells him that he is capable of good, that he is the bearer of divinity, that he needs no grace but his own love, no miracle but his own reason, no salvation but his own humanity. The religion of humanity is universal. It does not belong to one nation or one church. It is the heritage of all mankind, for it is founded not on revelation, but on the essence of man, which is the same in all. It does not divide but unites, it does not exclude but embraces. Its truth is as clear as the sun, its principles as simple as life itself. Every man who loves, who seeks truth, who works for justice, is its adherent, whether he knows it or not. It requires no baptism but birth, no creed but humanity, no ritual but life. It is not a sect but the essence of all. It is the realization of what all religions have sought in symbols and myths, the unveiling of the mystery that God is man. In this sense it is the true Catholic religion, the universal faith, the eternal truth. The task of the future is to build this religion. It will not come by miracle, it will not descend from heaven. It must be created by man, by his thought, his love, his action. Every step forward in knowledge, every victory of justice, every act of compassion is a stone in its temple. It grows with humanity. It develops with history. It is not finished, for humanity is not finished. It is the ever-unfolding consciousness of man's essence, the eternal progress of freedom and love. Its prophets are the thinkers who reveal truth. Its saints are the lovers who devote themselves to humanity. Its martyrs are those who suffer for justice. But unlike the old religions, it does not canonize individuals above others, it recognizes the divinity of all. Its goal is not the exaltation of a few, but the liberation of all. Its promise is not heaven for the elect, but earth as a home for mankind. This religion is not without reverence, for reverence is the essence of religion. But its reverence is directed not to an idol, not to a book, not to a dogma, but to humanity, to life, to love, to truth. To look into the eyes of another human being with respect, to feel the sanctity of nature, to honor the truth wherever it appears. This is its worship. Its liturgy is the practice of justice, its hymns are the songs of freedom, its festivals are the celebrations of life. It does not need ceremonies to sanctify it, for life itself is the ceremony. It does not need sacraments, for every act of love is sacrament, every deed of justice communion. It does not need priests, for every man and woman is its minister. It does not need temples, for the world itself is its temple. Wherever man lives with love and truth, there is its altar. Thus the religion of humanity is not an abstraction, but the most concrete of all. It touches every part of life. It embraces every aspect of existence. It sanctifies the family by love, society by justice, labor by dignity, science by truth, art by beauty. It reconciles man with himself, with others, with nature. It abolishes alienation by restoring man to himself, by revealing that his essence is divine, that his life is sacred. It fulfills the promise of religion by making earth itself a heaven, by turning the ideals once projected into another world into realities here and now. It is the final reconciliation of man with man, of thought with life, of truth with love. It is the religion of the future, the religion of humanity. Science is the rising sun of the modern world, the light which dispels the darkness of superstition, the torch which illuminates the true essence of man and nature. Where religion of the past demanded faith in mysteries, science demands knowledge of facts. Where religion imposed authority, science appeals to reason. Where religion separated the divine from the human, science reveals their unity, for it shows that what man once ascribed to supernatural powers is the result of natural causes, and that the laws of the universe are not alien decrees, but the very framework of existence. Science is therefore not hostile to religion when religion is understood in its truth, for science reveals the very object of religion, the essence of man, and the reality of life. It is only hostile to the false form of religion, to the dogmas and illusions that alienate man from himself. Science is the new revelation, but it is a revelation not of God, but of man's own essence as it unfolds in nature and history. The more science advances, the more it discloses that man is not a creature fallen from heaven, nor a being corrupted by original sin, but a part of nature, a product of life, an expression of the same forces that shape the stars and the earth. This knowledge does not degrade him, it exalts him, for it shows that he is at home in the universe, that his reason is not an accident, but the flowering of natural law. To know oneself as part of nature is to overcome estrangement, to abolish the illusion of separation, to reconcile man with the world. Science reveals that life is not a curse, but a wonder, that death is not a punishment, but a natural transformation, that morality is not a divine command, but a necessity of social existence. It teaches man to replace fear with understanding, resignation with action, prayer with labor. In this sense, science deepens religion, for it sanctifies reality, it reveals the sacred in the natural, the divine in the human. But science alone is not enough. Knowledge without love is cold. Truth without community is barren. Science provides the light, but love provides the warmth. The religion of the future must unite both. It must be the union of science and humanity, of knowledge and community, of truth and love. For man does not live by knowledge alone, he lives by fellowship, by sympathy, by the communion of souls. The real church of the future is therefore not a building of stone, not an institution of priests, but the community of men and women united by love and truth. Wherever men gather to share knowledge, to help one another, to live in justice and solidarity, there is the temple of the new religion. Its rituals are the acts of cooperation, its hymns are the voices of friendship, its sacraments are the bonds of community. In this church, no one is excluded, for humanity itself is its congregation, and the only condition of membership is to be human. Community is the realization of humanity. For man is not complete alone, he finds himself only in others, he discovers his essence only in fellowship. The isolated individual is an abstraction, a fragment torn from the whole. In community, man experiences love, he learns justice, he practices solidarity. The past religions preached community, but divided mankind into believers and unbelievers, chosen and rejected. The new religion abolishes these divisions. It proclaims that every man is a brother, every woman a sister, every child a sacred being. It sanctifies not the church but the family, not the priesthood but friendship, not the hierarchy but equality. Its communion is not in bread and wine, but in the common life, in shared labor, in mutual support. Its baptism is birth, its confirmation maturity, its ordination the devotion of each to the service of all. In this community man realizes his divinity, for divinity is nothing other than the unity of humanity. The link between knowledge and community is essential. For science reveals truth, but it is community that makes truth fruitful. Knowledge alone can remain abstract, confined to books and minds. But when knowledge is shared, when it is applied to life, when it becomes the common possession of all, it transforms the world. Science discovers the laws of nature, community applies them to relieve suffering, to increase well-being, to create justice. Science unveils the structure of the body. Community builds hospitals, trains physicians, heals the sick. Science discloses the secrets of matter, community creates industry, agriculture, art. Science reveals the conditions of life, community organizes society to fulfill them. Thus knowledge and cooperation together create fulfillment. Alone, each is incomplete, united, they make the religion of the future real. For what is fulfillment if not the harmony of truth and love, of reason and community? The religion of humanity will therefore venerate science as sacred. Its prophets are the discoverers. Its saints are the benefactors. Its martyrs are those who suffer for truth. But it will not worship them as idols, for it recognizes that their greatness lies only in their service to humanity. The true meaning of science is not the glory of individuals, but the advancement of all. Knowledge is not a private possession, but a common good. To conceal it is sin, to share it is virtue. Every discovery, every invention, every truth belongs not to one, but to humanity. The astronomer who maps the stars, the chemist who reveals the elements, the teacher who enlightens a child, all are priests of the new religion. For they serve truth and love. Their church is not separated from the world. It is the world itself as it becomes conscious of itself through knowledge. This religion will also sanctify labor. For labor is the means by which knowledge is applied, by which community is realized, by which humanity sustains itself. In the past, religion's labor was despised, it was considered a curse, a punishment for sin. But in truth, labor is sacred, for it unites man with nature. It transforms the earth, it creates culture. Every act of labor is a service to humanity, every worker is a minister of life. The farmer who tills the soil, the craftsman who shapes matter, the builder who raises a home, the artist who creates beauty, all fulfill a religious function when their work serves truth and love. Labor is worship when it is conscious of its sacred purpose. The religion of humanity will recognize this. It will abolish the division between sacred and profane. It will declare that to work for the good of mankind is the highest prayer. Thus the future religion will be practical as well as theoretical. It will not be content with ideas, it will demand deeds. It will not preach resignation, but transformation. It will not promise salvation in another world, but will create salvation in this one. It will sanctify science and labor, community and love, truth and justice. Its aim is not to lead man away from the world, but to reconcile him with it. It will reveal that the sacred is not elsewhere but here, not in heaven, but in earth, not in God but in man. It will abolish the alienation that has divided man from himself and from his fellows. It will unite knowledge with action, reason with love, science with community. In this unity lies the true fulfillment of humanity, the realization of its divinity. The community of the future is therefore the realization of the idea of God. For God has always been the symbol of unity, of the highest being. But in truth, the highest being is humanity itself, united in love and truth. What religion has called God is nothing other than the ideal of human community, projected into heaven. The task of the future is to bring this ideal down to earth, to make it real in society. The true worship of God is the creation of justice. The true adoration is the practice of love. The true heaven is the harmony of mankind. The community that realizes this is the true church, the only church. It requires no creed but humanity, no ritual but life, no authority but conscience, no revelation but science, no God but love. In this church all are priests, for all share in the divine essence, which is the essence of humanity itself. Science and community together transform morality. For science reveals the conditions of human life, and community applies them in practice. Science shows that man is not an isolated being but part of nature, subject to its laws. Community shows that he is not an isolated individual but part of society, subject to its needs. Together they teach that morality is not obedience to divine command but conformity to human essence. They reveal that justice, love, and freedom are not arbitrary decrees, but necessities of life. They sanctify conscience by grounding it in reality. They abolish fear by replacing it with knowledge. They free man from superstition by giving him truth. Thus science and community are the foundations of the new religion. For they reconcile man with nature and with his fellows. They reveal the sacred in the real. The fulfillment promised by this religion is not a distant heaven, but the harmony of life itself. It is the joy of love, the peace of conscience, the dignity of labor, the delight of knowledge, the strength of community. It is the abolition of alienation, the reconciliation of man with himself, with others, with the world. It is the transformation of earth into a dwelling worthy of humanity. This fulfillment is not given by miracle, it is created by man. It is not a gift of grace, it is the fruit of reason and love. It is not reserved for the few, it is the right of all. It grows as science advances, as community deepens, as love expands. It is endless, for humanity is infinite in its possibilities. This is the true salvation, the true religion, the true future. Thus the role of science and community is decisive. They are the pillars of the religion of humanity, the means by which man reclaims his essence, the instruments of reconciliation. Science reveals, community realizes. Science enlightens, community unites. Science frees from superstition, community frees from isolation. Together they create fulfillment, they sanctify life, they transform the world. The religion of the future will therefore be the union of knowledge and love, of reason and solidarity, of truth and humanity. It will be the final reconciliation of man with himself and with his fellows, the true realization of what religion has always sought. It will be the triumph of humanity. The course of our reflection has led us from the alienation of man in the religions of the past to the reconciliation of man with himself in the religion of the future. We began by showing that the essence of religion is nothing other than the essence of man, estranged from him and projected outward into the form of God. We saw how the attributes of divinity, love, justice, wisdom, power, eternity, are only human qualities purified of limitation and magnified to infinity. We examined how the doctrines of Christianity, while profound in meaning, estrange man from his own nature by ascribing to Christ alone what belongs to humanity as such. We showed that the incarnation is true, but only as the incarnation of humanity itself, that atonement is true, but only as the reconciliation of man with himself, that miracles are true, but only as symbols of human desire and hope. We then passed from critique to affirmation, from alienation to reconciliation, from theology to anthropology. We proclaimed the religion of humanity, founded not on fear and submission, but on love and reason, not on supernatural illusions, but on human truth. We sanctified love, compassion, solidarity, knowledge, labor, and community as the true principles of religion. And we declared that the future belongs not to theology, but to anthropology, not to faith in God, but to faith in man. The task now is to gather these insights into a final vision. What is the meaning of replacing theology with anthropology? It is the recognition that man himself is the highest being for man, that humanity is the true object of reverence, that what has been adored in God must now be embraced in man. Theology is the projection of human essence into heaven, anthropology is the recognition of this essence on earth. Theology estranges, anthropology reconciles. Theology commands obedience to an alien will, anthropology demands fidelity to our own nature. Theology divides life into sacred and profane, anthropology sanctifies all life. Theology promises salvation in another world, anthropology creates salvation in this one. Thus, to replace theology with anthropology is to abolish alienation and to restore man to himself. It is to exchange illusion for reality, slavery for freedom, resignation for action. It is to make religion human, practical, ethical, earthly. This transformation does not abolish the sacred but restores it. For the sacred is nothing other than the recognition of what is of infinite worth. Love is sacred, truth is sacred, justice is sacred, freedom is sacred. Theology recognized this, but it transferred their sacredness to a foreign being. Anthropology restores their sacredness to man. It proclaims that every act of love, every pursuit of truth, every deed of justice, every expression of freedom is holy. The religion of the future, therefore, has no need of mysteries or miracles, for its truth is transparent, its principles evident, its commands simple. It needs no dogmas, for its creed is humanity. It needs no sacraments, for its life itself is sacrament. It needs no priests, for every man and woman is its minister. It needs no temples, for the world itself is its temple. Wherever man lives in love and truth, there is its sanctuary. The religion of love is the heart of this vision. For love reconciles what alienation divided, it unites man with man, it abolishes egoism. In love man discovers his essence, for he finds himself in another. He realizes that he is not complete in isolation, but only in community. Love is not commanded, it arises from the heart. It is not imposed, it is the free act of humanity. To sanctify love is to sanctify humanity itself. The religion of the future will therefore proclaim love as its first principle, not love of God above man, but love of man as God. It will abolish fear, it will banish submission, it will teach that to love one another is the highest worship, the true adoration, the real communion. Love will be its commandment, and in fulfilling this commandment man fulfills his own essence. Reason is the second principle. For without reason love is blind, and without love reason is barren. Reason liberates man from superstition. It replaces faith with knowledge, it dispels the darkness of mystery. Reason reconciles man with nature by showing him its laws. It reconciles man with himself by revealing his essence. It reconciles man with others by disclosing the conditions of justice. To sanctify reason is to sanctify truth, to make knowledge sacred. The religion of the future will therefore revere science as revelation. It will honor every seeker of truth as a priest, every discoverer as a prophet. It will not oppose reason with faith, but will unite reason with love. For reason without love is cold, and love without reason is blind. Only in their union is humanity complete. Human flourishing is the final aim. For religion, rightly understood, is not about death, but about life, not about resignation, but about fulfillment. The religions of the past promised heaven in the future, but neglected the earth in the present. They taught man to despise his body, to renounce joy, to abase himself. But the religion of the future will sanctify life in all its fullness. It will declare that to live well is to be religious, that to enjoy beauty, to cultivate art, to labor with dignity, to create justice, to pursue truth, to love sincerely, is to worship. It will transform earth into heaven, not by miracle but by love and reason, not by grace but by labor and knowledge. Its salvation is not beyond the grave, but in the flourishing of humanity here and now. To abolish misery, to relieve suffering, to create happiness, to cultivate freedom. This is its gospel. The religion of the future is the religion of life. This final vision unites all that we have said. The religion of humanity reconciles man with himself by abolishing alienation. It reconciles him with nature by recognizing that he is part of it. It reconciles him with others by sanctifying love and solidarity. It unites science and community, reason and compassion, knowledge and action. It abolishes the false opposition between divine and human by showing that the divine is nothing other than the human essence. It abolishes the division between sacred and profane by showing that all life is sacred. It abolishes the illusion of another world by sanctifying this one. It fulfills the deepest longing of religion by making it real, by turning symbols into truths, myths into realities, faith into knowledge. It is the final stage of religion, not its destruction but its truth. The call of the future is therefore clear. Man must have the courage to replace theology with anthropology, to exchange the illusion of God for the reality of humanity. He must dare to know, dare to love, dare to be free. He must recognize himself as the highest being, not in arrogance but in truth. For to recognize humanity as divine is to recognize love, justice, and reason as sacred. He must cease to abase himself before idols of his own making, cease to pray to his own heart estranged from him, cease to impoverish himself by enriching another. He must reclaim his essence, restore to himself what he has alienated, reconcile himself with himself. He must build the religion of humanity, the religion of love, reason, and human flourishing. This is not a dream, it is the reality already present wherever man loves and knows, wherever he acts justly and lives freely. It is the destiny of humanity, the fulfillment of history, the final reconciliation. The religion of the future is therefore not a utopia, but a necessity. For humanity cannot remain forever alienated. It cannot live forever in contradiction, worshipping its own essence as foreign, despising itself while adoring another. History is the progress of reconciliation, the return of man to himself. The religions of the past were stages in this progress, necessary but incomplete. They revealed truth in alienated form, they preserved it in symbols and myths. Now the time has come to unveil the mystery, to declare openly that God is man, that religion is humanity, that the sacred is life. The future belongs to this truth, for it alone can unite mankind, it alone can abolish division, it alone can reconcile love and reason, freedom and necessity, individual and community. It is the true religion, for it is the religion of truth. Thus we conclude, the task of our time is to found this religion, not by creating new dogmas, but by living the truth. Not by building temples, but by building community, not by worshipping idols, but by loving one another. The religion of humanity is not imposed, it is embraced freely, it is not revealed from without. It arises from within, it is not a matter of faith, it is a matter of knowledge and love. It is the final reconciliation of man with himself, with others, with nature. It is the religion of the future, the religion of love, reason, and human flourishing. In this religion the alienation of the past is overcome, the essence of humanity is restored, the sacred is revealed in the real, and man is at last at home in the universe.